Welcome to this week's Red Letters podcast, where we, everyday people, are talking about life-changing topics. And today's topic, we're going to be talking about the Beatitudes, and we're in verse 5, where it says, "Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth," or land. Does anybody want to start?
I think it'd be wise for us to give a definition, because meek isn't something I don't remember the last time I heard it in the everyday world.
Yeah. And it was Matthew 5, verse 5, in case anybody was wondering.
Oh, what'd you say, Mom?
I'm sorry.
You said verse 5.
Yeah.
I did say verse 5, but I forgot the chapter.
There you go.
Oh, okay.
Chapter 5.
So
Matthew.
meek, did somebody got that or?
I did, actually. The definition for meek, I got humbly patient or quiet in nature, overly submissive or compliant, tame, gentle, kind.
I have another definition as well. It's almost the same,
No, go ahead.
Just wanted to share it. Meek is defined as it's not weakness, but rather strength under control. It involves humility, gentleness, and a submissive spirit that yields to God's will and demonstrates restraints in the face of adversity.
And some Bibles, I was talking to Mary off air, that they say they interchange humble and meek.
Or gentle.
Or gentle.
Or
Oh, I didn't
lowly.
see that
That's
one.
another one.
Or
Lowly.
lowly? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Lowly.
Well, but the idea of meek, I love that you said strength under the control, because I had that written down too. But the idea is, I was looking, I said, what's like a word picture for that definition to kind of digest that a little better? And it said it's like a lion that chooses to be gentle rather than aggressive, or a calm, steady breeze that soothes rather than destroys. So that's, if you look at a lion choosing to be tame, choosing to be under control, that's a picture of meekness.
Yeah.
And it's funny that it's getting like a flashback when I read this particular verse, because I remember I was a maybe I was saved a year or two, and I was taking a college course, and they said, come up with like a username for something. And I'm thinking, I looked back and I was like, I don't know, but I put the meek servant. That was the thing where I put there.
You pulled a Moses.
Yeah, but I'm over here writing it, and I guess it might have been pride causing me to write that. But I was just like innocent at the time, and I was like, I want to be the meek servant, thinking it was just like, I want to be the humble servant or whatever.
Because I think in Numbers, Moses, he's writing the book of Numbers, and he says Moses was the meekest or the most humblest person, and he's writing about himself.
Yeah. Well, John did the same thing in his gospel when he says, the disciple whom the Lord loved.
Yeah.
But I mean, they must have meant it for real for the Lord to put it
because
in
it
the
was
Bible.
accepted.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So I think for like off the bat, like having the picture of meekness, goes to the Sermon on the Mount when Jesus talks about when someone demands your cloak, you give them your shirt, or like not reviling if someone slaps you on one cheek, and you not reviling or slapping someone else. Because I think Peter says that even though Jesus was reviled, he didn't revile. Even though he was like abused, he didn't threaten.
Retaliate,
and so
Yeah.
it's like that's a perfect word, retaliation. And for us to be Christ followers, we're supposed to follow that example that Jesus set. And just like you said, like him choosing to be lowly, not coming on a war horse, but a donkey, like everything contrary to how we want our knight in shining armor to look like,
Right.
is someone that could do all those things, but chooses not to. But the thing I was thinking about was like inheriting the earth. Like how does that go hand in hand? Like, why is it that the ones that choose not to retaliate are promised the earth, to inherit the earth?
I don't know, but earlier we were talking off record, I guess. And Ruth asked something about heaven, how the scripture was written about heaven, kingdom of heaven and earth. And what I wanted to share was, but I don't know if this is true. This is just God speaking to me or me hearing voices. I don't know. There's something wrong with me. But what I got from this is they will inherit the earth, is that their generations will be the ones here on earth, that we will be the ones making that impact or being influential, because those are the ones, how the word says, how does it say it again? Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth, because although they have power and authority, they will choose to use they will choose to be gentle and use restraint. So God is going to trust them, them and their generation. That's what I got
That was actually
here on
really
earth.
good. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Because when we go up to heaven, like the kingdom of heaven, and I believe that's ours, that's when we go to our next phase of life. But while we're here and what we're leaving behind, they're the ones that are going to inherit, but we have to be the staple for what they're going to do. And by that, it means even though we're in power, we have to use gentleness with people. And if you think about it, the world that we're living in, do you see a lot of meekness with people in power?
Yeah, they just do it by force. But I'm also thinking of the book we're reading too. Like we're in a church, the leadership. It talks about influence, the first chapter, and then talks about what a boss does and what a leader does, and leading by example. And I think meekness is one of the star qualities you'd want in a leader.
Exactly.
So that makes a lot of sense what you're saying. Makes sense.
I think of, like, to add to what you guys already said, I think it kind of, the picture I get is like the corporate ladder. People trying to go up the corporate ladder, but the ones that are stepping on people to get there, they're not really inheriting the earth.
No.
Yeah.
That's not the heart behind it, but the ones that can actually turn around and be going up the corporate ladder, but bringing people with them, with the team with them, then they're inheriting the earth. But I struggled at first because I was like, at first when I read that, I thought, okay, it's talking about you inherit the earth. So are you inheriting like relationships? Is that what it is? That it's people that you're going to influence, that, because you're choosing to walk this meek life? But then everything I read, it's saying, no, it's tangible possessions. It's an inheritance that you're granted because you're choosing to have strength under control, and you're able to build, what do you call it? Almost like not really just a network, but you're turning around and building people up in the process of you being blessed and prosperous. And therefore, like, other people will be looking out for you because you're looking out for them. And kind of like the principle of sowing and reaping in relationships, but it affects even you in the possession world, if you will. I'm not saying that he's trying to say that you're going to have the nicest house in the neighborhood and live in the most, that's not necessarily the promise. The promise is that you're going to inherit the earth. Okay. You're going to have dominion. It could be in dominion in your area of influence. You're going to have a favor of God that's unfair to the average person because you're choosing to walk a meek life, that you're choosing to have self-control and looking out and loving people in the process of your pursuit.
That's good.
Well, actually, when I was reading up on that part, because I questioned it, it gave me a cross-reference verse for that. And it says right here, the promise granted through faith says, for the promise that he would be the heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. And then right here, my footnotes in my Bible, it was crazy because it says faith occurs when we cease trying to do something by our own effort and trust someone else to do it for us. Faith is the one attitude that is exactly the opposite of trusting ourselves. So it goes back to that having lowliness and meekness. And then it goes back to, it's not by, through the law, but it's through righteousness of faith, having faith in God. And it kind of goes back to that first beatitude, or the first blessed are those who are poor in spirit, because they kind of talks about humility and that lowliness, and it cross-references back to this regarding, so it's, that one talks about being, inheriting the kingdom of heaven, but this one talks about inheriting the earth. But it goes back to being humble
and dependence,
and having
on God.
the dependency on God, having faith.
Yeah.
And I know we kind of connected the first one to the second one, but now I think it's important to kind of connect the second to the third beatitude, where we start off in the beginning. He says, recognize your need for me. The second one, okay, mourn, have a heart of repentance, because you're probably going to fall short in the process of pursuing me. Now he's saying, okay, now that you repented, don't be self-absorbed, if you will, and think you could do it in your own strength, because it's going to be my power at work within you. You need to have self-control so that you can now take dominion. So it's like it's like an unfolding of this benefit package if you choose to want to live this blessed life that Jesus was talking about.
Well, and then I'd say too, the third one is having faith, because you're having faith in something you can't see.
Well, I think
and that
faith
you-
is integrated throughout the whole thing, I think.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
particular to the third one. It's interwoven through all the Beatitudes, because you can't come to him if you don't have faith. So it
Right.
starts off even with the first
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I was thinking about, I don't know if it was today or yeah, I think it was today, how Jesus came as a lamb first. And I think there's like a time and place to where you take those slaps on the cheek and almost like in a lamb, to be a lamb. But then like when Jesus comes back, he's going to come as the Lion of Judah. So it's like the first coming, he's coming as a lowly servant. Of course, he's disturbing darkness by casting out demons and setting captives free. But when he comes back, he's not going to be a lamb. He's not going to be silent. He's going to come back with like power and with a sword coming out of his mouth. Good. And so I thought that was a beautiful. I was getting amped up thinking about like Jesus coming through the clouds on Judgment Day. Like I know a lot of people are gonna be like, "Dude, we were wrong," but I'm gonna be like, "Dude, I was right." But I think they're
With
coming,
humility, right?
Yeah, with humility. Yeah, I'm not gonna shove it in people's faces, but it's gonna. There's a beautiful picture that like. There's a time and place to be a lamb and a lion, and the lion not against like our flesh and bone, like the people that might rub us the wrong way, but like to the enemy and to the princes and principalities of darkness. That's where we show our lion side, but it's not ours actually. It's just the spirit of Jesus through us. So it's not meaning like to take everything, take the slap from like if Satan's walking all over you, like, no, you're going to take that ground from Satan and realize that there's the darkness behind the person. If that makes sense, is you know what I'm getting at? Yeah.
It's kind of like, it kind of makes you think of, well, no, that's not a good example. No, the one that comes to mind was Smith Wigglesworth. When he would cast out demons, he did it in a very unorthodox way. But he said, I'm not doing it to the person. I'm doing it to the spirit behind the person.
Yeah, he said, he goes like, because he was known to hit people, so he goes, I'm hitting the devils.
Not a good example.
Yeah.
He goes, I'm hitting the devil, but the person's getting in the way.
Yeah.
Don't hit people. I'm just saying. This is just a question, but because you read that reference verse in Romans, right? With Abraham, do you think Abraham would be a good example of what meekness looked like, as far as like him, or was it just more of when because that verse in here it says clearly God's promise to give the whole earth to Abraham and his descendants was not based on his obedience to God's law, but on the right relationship with God that comes by faith. But right now I'm thinking about Abraham's life, and he wasn't like quick to like. He wasn't quick with a sword. He was very much like quiet, kind of hidden and reserved, and the way he handled things was very not diplomatic, but like it was different than some other characters in the Bible.
It goes
and
back
I was just
to,
curious.
It goes back to where it says we're not doing it in our own efforts. We don't like Abraham didn't do everything in his own power and his own ability, but he did it through faith, trusting fully in God.
I understand, but that's my question is more of like, would you say one of the reasons why that verse was referenced was because of even the character of Abraham displaying a measure of meekness while he was on the earth?
So.
I would say that 100% because God gave him a promise that he was going to be a father of many, a multitude. Yeah. So God already put predetermined a position for him. And although he did that, look at how when he had to make a decision between him and Lot, you pick. He could have ruled in his own power. He could have dictated what took place and told Lot to go where he wanted to. He's the man. But strength under control will turn around and tell you to avoid conflict. I'm going to turn around and, hey, Lot, you pick.
Yeah, and I think God was watching over his Abraham's path because I think he gets blessed with like the better land too, right?
Yeah.
Well, initially, doesn't it even paint like the part that Lot chose seems so beautiful and luscious?
Yeah, initially.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
but
Sodom and
sin doesn't
Gomorrah.
look like that.
Yeah, that's true. And another like picture of meekness I found out was in 2 Samuel 16:11, where David, he's going down like the street, I'm assuming, with his mighty men, and comes a guy who's Saul's either son or grandson, and he's cursing David and throwing rocks at David and his men. And David's literally like, "Hey, let him do what he wants." And he literally could have, like, he was the king. And the guy's like, "Oh, God's taking the kingdom from you, and he's giving it to your son." And one of David's dudes are like, "Hey, do you want us to kill this guy?" And he's like, "No, don't kill him. He has the right to, curse me, whatever."
That's a good picture.
I feel like I've never read that story until I actually found it. But I think, yeah. And then another one would be like, when in Acts, when Stephen, he's getting stoned, and like he tells God, like, "Don't hold this against them." And like I feel like it's the picture of like we would like to think we have the right to act out and like defend ourselves, but then like God's like, "Don't, like, leave justice in my hands. I am the justifier. I'm the judge," kind of thing.
And I love also the story of Moses, because Moses goes up against Pharaoh. And I've always thought, you had the power in your hand, just take him out. Like, so, but he didn't. Like, he obeyed. So again, his commitment to God was deeper than even the power that he held in his own hand. So to me, it's like, that's demonstrating control. Like, you know what? I could possibly do this. I don't know if Moses felt that way, but you think about us today. I was like, "Oh, I'm just going to whack this guy over the head."
Take it in our own
but
hands.
I think having that type of love and commitment to God and dependency on God drove him to do that. But not only that, but when he delivered the people and they were in the desert, like, the people came against Moses. I mean, I'm sorry. I would have been like, "I'm done with this. Pick up my staff again and do something to the people." But it was like what Moses demonstrated once again. It's like his dependency on God. It's like, well, God, what do you want me to do with these people? But I think, we don't see that now. Like, if you think of all the people in power, the people that are making the rules, are making the laws, they're not showing that. I think this world has gone to some place, but I don't know. Do you guys have an example of somebody who does demonstrate that?
Like now?
Nowadays?
Yeah.
I would have to, because I feel like it's a quality that could be shown, but it's not like something that's like shown that I know.
Or advertised.
Yeah, it's not advertised. It's like there's moments you could see it shine, and then you're like, okay, no.
Oh.
Yeah. Or we could even like modify the question on how could we walk out meekness in our life.
Yeah.
Like turning the other cheek.
I think that's like where my mind goes to, like when people curse you or people talk bad about you. And I think especially if you're in the customer service industry, you'll have those. When you'll have those customers that are having a bad day, and I think when you choose not to retaliate or treat them just the same as like when you don't raise your voice because they're raising your voice, I think that shows like power under control. That shows meekness.
Yeah.
Well, I think even like, for example, if you, let's say you lose it at that moment, but you no. I'm actually using this as an example because it actually happened with me when you talked about customer service, because I had to make a phone call, and trust me, I've been fighting back and forth trying to discuss this warranty thing that we had with our furniture. And I had called and I talked to an employee at the actual furniture store, and she told me one thing. And then when I called back the next day, I was told the same thing by the supervisor, but then the supervisor turned or told me the same thing. But then I called back the next or about a week later, and then found out that what the supervisor and the employee had told me wasn't what happened. What happened was I had lost $700 and something from $700, almost $800. It went down to $16. But I had honestly I raised my voice. I had raised my voice, right? And at that moment I didn't have full self-control, but then I recognized what I was doing, and I had told her, I stopped what I was doing, and I got convicted. Honestly, I got convicted. And I just said, "Ma'am," I said, "You know what? I'm not your enemy." And I said, forgive me for raising my voice. But, and I even told her, I said, if you want to take a moment and gather your thoughts, you're more than welcome to. And she actually paused for a second. She goes, yeah, I need to take a break right now just to, calm down.
What'd you say to her?
You know?
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
No. And then when she came
That's the
back,
next episode.
when she came back on the phone, I calmly started talking to her, right? But the thing is again, I feel like we do make mistakes, but it doesn't give us the right to do that at that moment. But I feel like that's where that, for me, it bothered me that I was like, man, Lord, I just hurt you because I lost my temper there for a moment, right? Mm-hmm. But even in the little things, every little thing that we do, we don't, like, for example, even road rage or you getting upset with somebody. I think we're supposed to have that, the fruits of the Spirit says to be patient, and to have self-control and things like that. And for me, it made me examine myself. Am I really walking, fully in the fruits of the Spirit, and stuff like that? But I didn't.
But I would probably say that was weak too, because that was the repenting part.
Oh.
Because that's what you did. Meekness is strength under control. So that would have happened if you had control. So you went back 1 week. You know what I mean? In other words, it's true, but to turn around and to step out of control and then get back into control, you're not applying this particular thing. That's what I'm trying to say. That was actually more the morning where we're like, hey, I messed up. Let me make it right. So that's So, but
the question you had was more like, how can we walk it out?
Yeah, how could we walk that out in our day-to-day life? Because sometimes I think it's important for us to look at that besides just talking about it.
No, true. Because when I hear someone, it's okay. When I hear the term meekness, I'm not gonna lie, I never think of that word ever. Mm-hmm. And even now, I feel like it wasn't until we decided this that I even understood what it fully meant. Because I kind of always just thought meek was humble.
Yeah.
And I just intertwined the two. And I know there's similarities, but power under control is very much really intense. Mm-hmm. But I think going back to the verse that I referenced with Abraham, one of the things was it says that it wasn't based on his obedience to God's law, but on his right relationship with God. I think obviously, which we'll always go back to the fundamentals, but it begins with the right relationship with the Father. Mm-hmm. Like that intimacy with him, I think helps us because he's the one who allows us to have control over a situation. Instead of having a moment of outburst, we hold it in because we realize the bigger picture.
And look at the Abraham, another example, since we're talking about him. Here God has every right to smite Sodom and Gomorrah. He has the right to do that. But here's Abraham going in pleading for them. Like, hey, I know we have a relationship. Would you please consider my petition, Lord? Mm-hmm. Would you do this? And then he kept fine tuning it because he wanted to see his family members saved and in a good position, although Lot wasn't ever looking. It didn't look like Lot ever looked out for Abraham's benefit for the most part. It's always Abraham looking out for him. And it's just so crazy that, again, God could have done this. Here's Abraham being like a mediator, like, please, God, don't do this. Mm-hmm. This is my family member. I know he might have done me wrong or thought he gave me the short end of the stick. And I see you blessed me. You gave me favor and I inherited the earth. Yeah. But I want to plead that you wouldn't do this to him. So he saves him. You know what I mean? But it's just that how much power, first of all, God has. But then second, Abraham had a whole lot of power that he actually, you could almost say he changed God's mind.
Well, that's what Moses did because at one point, when you guys were talking earlier about Moses and the people, God wanted to destroy everyone.
He did.
No,
He
I know.
wanted, but
I know. I was
Moses
just
threw
sticking to
himself
Abraham
down on
because
the
that was
floor
the
and
person
started
we
interceding
were
for the
talking
people,
about.
and he changed God's heart of destroying everyone.
Yeah. But I don't know if it was this week or this episode or last week, but we were saying about actually cultivating a heart for God. Mm-hmm. That's what Moses demonstrated. That's what Abraham demonstrated. That, hey, I want to see redemption. I want to see, safety. I want you to provide comfort. I want you to intervene, God, because that's his heart anyway. So it's amazing to see people embracing his heart for his own creation as well.
And I think Jesus was the ultimate
Oh yeah,
meekness.
hands down.
Yeah, because he
Yeah.
did not retaliate,
Yeah.
and he could have retaliated. Yeah. I love him so much because I'm like, God, what you couldn't have done to us, and he chose to love us instead, in spite of our downfall.
Yeah.
So I know meekness means power under control, power under control. Is self-control, and it might be off topic, but self-control and power under control, can they go hand in hand, or?
I think they're intertwined because turning the other cheek, like we've mentioned it a couple of times, if somebody does you wrong, you have the right to revenge. You think you do, but if you're going to walk out this Christ-like life, you forfeited that right. So now you have to choose to have self-control, not retaliate, and bless those who curse you. Love your enemy. That's where I think that you have to have a self-control to walk out the meekness. Because at the end of the day, that's when the kingdom of heaven, the power of God is at work within our lives, but we just choose to walk out what Jesus would do. So I think they're kind of interchanged, or they complement each other, if you want to put it that way.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I wasn't sure because these past couple months, I think self-discipline and self-control are words that I'm like, man, these are strong words that are really hard to put into consideration or put into practice. And I think a lot of the habitual, or not habitual, or is it habitual sin would be like because you don't have the self-control to cut it off, like Jesus said,
Like a
pluck your
vice.
eye out. And it's just you literally lack self-control to say no to those things, like whether it be a whole bunch of other stuff, but how powerful it is because it's one of the fruits of the spirits, I think.
Yeah.
And God's been highlighting me like the power behind self-control and having that self-discipline in a lot of areas in your life.
And I think too, kind of going again to the question you asked about how could we practice it, is I think there's power in pausing.
Oh, yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
That's
like,
good.
especially because you use customer service, and I feel like there's times, especially because now at work I start answering phones, so I get even more interactions with people. And there's times where they'll go off on me, and there's moments where I'm like, I have every right, and I know exactly what I could say to make you stop, but I'll just be silent, or I'll pause to let myself to kind of practice self-control and to withhold when I could throw up, but I'm like, no. But I think it's the pausing that helps me, because if not, sometimes when we're quick to react, we say things we regret and we can't take them back because they're already said. Even if we apologize, I feel like
Damage is done.
the damage is done.
Well,
So,
I like one thing you just said, that you could throw up.
yeah.
What does that mean? You're going to have a mess to clean up too.
Oh, that's good. I didn't mean to do that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
your
it's true. But yeah, the power in pausing
Yeah.
before reacting
Yeah.
to something.
And I know we probably brought this verse up, but be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. That's
Yeah.
like one of those verses that you have to always try to walk out because it's so challenging. But when you get confronted with a situation, a circumstance, or whatever, then you want to vent to the ones that you love, because you just don't got self-control. You don't have the discipline to kind of maintain yourself and maintain your emotions, and you just want to go haywire. You're going to have a lot of cleanup to do. You're going to have conversations to try to mend. You're going to go back to week 2, do a little bit of mourning, and then make sure that you're in week 1. Okay, God, I'm relying on you.
Yeah. I think too,
No, go ahead.
I think too, I think going back to taking a pause and cleaning up your mess, that when people are, about to lash out or throw up, thinking back to it, it's almost like they're going to quick to defend themselves. They're looking for their own interests, wanting to be right, all this stuff about me, rather than leaving it in God's hands. Kind of like how we talked about earlier, and how Jesus could have done all this stuff, but he said, I'm going to place my trust in the one who judges in the end. There's people are going to come before God one day and answer for what they do, and it's not our job to take justice in our own hands, to be vengeance and to do all this stuff. Because I just read in Genesis when what do you call it? Shechem takes advantage of one of Jacob's daughter, and then his 2 sons go and trick them into retaliate, and they get cursed later down the line when Jacob's blessing all his kids and in a way cursing some of them for what they did, because they took vengeance into their own hands rather than giving it to God. And I think a lot of us reading that story be like, I'm with Simeon and Levi, or I think it's Simeon and it might be Levi. I don't want to, there's two of his sons who took it into their own hands, and we would agree they did the right thing. But that's not how God sees it. Like, I am the judge, you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's important. That's why it says strength under control, because I think the vengeance part of it is something that would come out if you lose control.
Okay. Yeah.
Or the retaliation part. Because I don't know if you remember this, but I was just getting this, remembering this right now. But you went with me on a call in El Cajon long time ago. Hey, son, you want to go with me? I had to go open a house or something. I went out to go open a house. And I got there and I opened the house. The guy, like, because I was quote unquote a Mexican or something, he wanted to just pay me chump change and like not even what I quoted him. And then I was like, no, that you need to go ahead and this is what it was. And I had you with me. You were just a little guy. And I'm walking and the guy starts mouthing off at me. And I'm like, okay, number one, I can't retaliate. Number two, I have my son with me. What's that going to look like? And then we start walking away, and I just had to like turn the other cheek literally. And I'm walking away, and I remember looking at you, and we're walking in the van, and you have tears coming down your face, like they're hurting my dad. That's what I saw, that a look on your face, and I was just like, where in my flesh I would have loved to like, son, sit in the car real quick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I felt like I didn't have the choice because I knew how bad it can get being put in that situation, first of all, but then you were with me. And I was like, I don't have that opportunity today. And I'm glad I didn't.
Oh yeah, I think that those are like those moments where it could look like weakness because you're this macho man and you're not acting out, but God blesses that, and that those are like what we're talking about. We'll inherit the earth, and so I don't remember that story, but yeah, I'm proud of you.
Yeah. Well, and there was a second story that was almost similar, but this is where when you have self-control and you turn around and realize, hey, I'm not gonna respond to this negative situation or action that somebody's throwing at me, and you have to trust in God. Is that in the same city, I was out there, I went to go do a job for another guy. He turned around, and he was a Middle Eastern guy, and he turned around and talked to me like I was a guy from TJ. Like, no, I'm only going to pay you this much. I said, sorry, I'm going to have to leave. And I drove all the way 30, 40 minutes to get there, get everything. And I was like, no. And I remember going back to my truck, and I said, God, please bless this guy. I pray that you would, not hold this against him and this and that. Next thing, my wife was witness. I think it was a week or two later, we're driving down the same street. That whole building was boarded up. It did not exist anymore. And I was like, God, I prayed for him, but what happened? But I'm not saying that's particularly why he went out of business, but maybe because he treated people like that. God's like, no, I'm a just God. That's not going to happen. You know what I mean? But to turn around and respond negative, it's not worth it. You're not walking out this Christian life. You're not looking like Jesus when we act out.
To respond negative, Pastor Tony, you said, but what about the situations, because you guys were talking about customer service, and so what about situations where an individual continues, like he's a person in power, authority, a director, if you will. Yeah. And they constantly make microaggressions. They make these little comments. They do these little things where everybody in the office knows that this is not correct, that this is either belittling, it's discrimination, it's not right. And when it's brought to his attention, or people want to bring it to her attention, they'll say stuff like, don't do that, because she believes that if you tell her anything, people don't like her. So people just take it. And I'm like, so that's just turning the other cheek, but that person is not being held accountable. Like, because I can understand if it's customer service and you're talking to this individual, but when it's a person that you work with day in, day out, you see them, and it's like, I don't believe that there's anything wrong in sitting down and wisely speaking to this person, using God's wisdom and saying, you know what, this is not right, like what you do, instead of continuing to let that happen.
Yeah. For that one, I would probably, and I would highly recommend, because there's a principle in the Bible that applies to church, the workplace, family, everything. that if somebody's doing wrong, you confront them in love. You bring it to their attention. If they're unrepentant, they don't care, they don't want to change, then take a witnesses, and then kind of continue that way. But I would do that, but the problem why people won't do that, too many people are afraid to lose their job, because sometimes that's a thing to confront a situation like that. Then it goes back to you deserve what you tolerate. If you choose to keep putting yourself in that environment and you don't want to have this conversation in the most loving way, even if it's just individually or like, hey, can I get you a cup of coffee? I just want to talk to you. And they're probably somebody who normally acts out like that on a regular basis probably doesn't have a relationship with God. So it's not like you can necessarily preach to them, but you can have a conversation that tugs at their heart to hopefully try to make some kind of amends. And I've seen it before where somebody actually goes forward, has a real amazing conversation where that person doesn't necessarily change for the group, but they changed towards the person because you were willing to take and have that conversation with them on the side. So now they have a level of respect for you because you came in love, you came with sincerity to try to build a bridge, and now they have a different type of, they don't act out on you, but they don't change for everybody else.
Right.
Because you thought that they were worth that time to have that conversation. So you might have to figure out exactly the wisdom of God for each situation.
Pray
but I
for
think that's
wisdom.
some of it. I think because I one of the things I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they were like, one of the things that I hear you talk about a lot is that have these tough conversations. She goes, and she goes, I don't know, I never really saw why it was worth it. But I'm actually starting to get that that's actually important, and you alleviate so much heck and hell because you're willing to have a constructive conversation. And so I'm
Courageous
seeing the value of
conversation,
that. And a lot of times I think like there's so many things that we can do in a conversation that there's so much power in that thing that we don't utilize. Everyone wants to go in their cave, point the finger, and look for a way out. They don't like where they're at, so when their boss isn't around, they're, okay, where can I apply? But then they're telling the boss, oh, I love this job. You see what I mean? So no higher up wants to hear that people don't like it, but without these conversations, nothing's going to change.
Yeah. Yeah, it shows that you care about them.
Yeah.
And I think too, like how you said, like praying for them too.
Yeah.
Because like everyone can complain, like, oh, they treat me bad, and like, but how often, like, if the conversation is not helping, like, also pray for this person. If you're having a tough boss, I don't, but I'm just saying, there's people, there's people that do.
Love you, son.
Well, imagine if you challenge yourself and say, Lord, you know what? I'm going to take this challenge, God. I'm going to pray for this person who at this moment doesn't seem lovable, but help me to love them as you love them. Help me to see them as you see them, and give me favor, give me wisdom and favor and how to win them over to you, and find little tiny things, even tasks that you maybe even asking them what kind of coffee they like. Do you like, even ask them simple little questions to know a little bit about themselves. And then maybe one day bring them a cup of coffee that they like. Do something that maybe you think they'll like that's out of the ordinary that, they wouldn't expect. Just little tiny things like that without even saying anything can build up that curiosity in them. Like, why are they doing this? And they might and it'll open a door where they can say, hey, why are you doing this?
Well, I think the Bible talks about like overcoming evil with
love.
Exactly.
love. Yeah. So it's like on par.
I have this little nugget that just came to mind, and I wrote it down, and I was like, "Ooh, don't read it. I'm gonna say it." Okay. Anyways, because we were talking about kind of going again to meekness, because that was the episode's about, but how we keep saying meekness is power under control. And then as everyone was talking and I was thinking of characters in the Bible, and the phrase that came to mind was they were able to walk out meekness because they understood that the power they had was not theirs to control. That's what I
so
said
good.
when it came to me. I was like, this is something Dad would say. But it's that really kind of like the first one we talked about a couple weeks ago, where it's like realizing your need for him. But in the third one, it's like you walk in meekness, knowing that what you carry, that power you possess, is not even yours to control, but it's the spirit within you that gives you the power that has the right to tell you what to do with it. You know what I
Mic
mean?
drop.
Go ahead and drop the mic.
That invisible mic. Yeah, that was good.
I don't think we have anything else to say after that, Ruth. Thank you. So just remember, meekness is power under control. And just like Ruth said, if you understand that that power is not yours, you will give all the control to God. So we thank you for listening, and we can't wait to talk to you again.